All right, so let's get right into it. Tucked away between India and Sri Lanka, there's this incredible 30-mile-long chain of limestone shoals. Now, depending on who you ask, it's one of two things. It's either a sacred bridge literally built by the gods, or it's just a random quirk of geology. And this single structure? Well, it's at the very center of a debate that has been raging for centuries.
So, which is it? A natural formation or a man-made bridge? That's the big question. But what's crazy is that just recently, an AI was pointed at this mystery, and it found something that, geologically speaking, just shouldn't be there. It's a discovery that's forcing us to rethink a huge piece of ancient history we were so sure we had figured out.
And I want to be really clear here. This is not just some dusty academic debate. We're talking about a structure so controversial it almost brought down a government. Back in 2007, there was a plan to dredge a canal right through it, and I mean the country erupted. We're talking massive protests, a political firestorm that went all the way to the top. The stakes, yeah, they're about as high as they get.
So for hundreds of years, this whole thing has been basically a stalemate. It really boils down to two completely different stories: science versus scripture. On one side, you have this incredible ancient text and the deeply held beliefs of millions, and on the other, you've got modern geology and what we'd call the scientific consensus. Let's dig into what each side is actually saying.
Okay, so here's the stalemate. The legend, coming from the incredible Hindu epic, the Ramayana, tells this amazing story of an army building a bridge with floating stones to rescue a queen. For millions, this isn't a myth, it's sacred history. But then you've got the geologists. They come in and say, hold on, this is a totally natural formation. You know, limestone, coral, sandbars. And here's their trump card. The boulders at the core are like 18 million years old. That's way before humans are even a thing. So case closed, right? Well, not so fast.
You know, this debate has been simmering for a long time. We have records from as far back as 1480 saying you could actually walk across it before a massive cyclone hit. Then, in 1804, British cartographers put it on the map. But things really kicked into high gear in 2002. That's when NASA released these incredible satellite photos, and they just went viral. Why? Because the alignment looked, well, it looked a little too perfect to be an accident. That just poured gasoline on the fire, leading right up to that huge crisis in 2007.
And this is where a stalemate that's lasted for centuries suddenly gets a 21st century plot twist. An AI enters the picture. A research team was developing this neural network, and its whole job was pretty simple. Teach it to tell the difference between natural stuff on the seafloor and things that were built, you know, artificial structures. And as a test, they decided to feed it all the data on Ram Setu. And the result was mind-blowing. The AI didn't say it was man-made, and it didn't say it was natural. It came back with one word: anomalous. Think about what that means. It means the structure's features just don't match up with any known natural way for things to form in that part of the ocean. It was an outlier, a statistical impossibility. So, the big question is, why? What did this AI see that generations of human experts had missed? Well, two things. First, the spacing. The boulders are placed with this really strange consistency. It's not the chaotic mess you'd expect from ocean currents just dumping rocks everywhere. And second, and this is the real bombshell, it's what's under the boulders. The AI found signatures of artificial compression in the layer below. It's as if something incredibly heavy was intentionally placed on top, squishing the foundation. That's not natural. Now you can probably guess what happened next. The scientific establishment pushed back, and they pushed back hard. Their argument? It's basically digital pareidolia. You know, that's the thing where our brains are wired to see patterns, like seeing a face in a cloud or the man in the moon. They said the AI was just doing the same thing, finding a meaningful pattern in what is ultimately just random chaos. Plus, they said, hey, remember, the rocks are millions of years old. But this is where the story takes another turn. Because the AI's purely logical, data-driven conclusion suddenly connected with a forgotten piece of human research. It turns out, an Indian geologist, a Dr. Narayanan, had spent a decade of his life studying this exact structure. And he had reached a very similar, very controversial conclusion that at the time, nobody wanted to listen to. And his idea, oh, it was brilliant, because it perfectly bridged the gap. He basically said, look, everybody's missing the point. His whole argument was this: the boulders themselves are ancient, but that doesn't mean they weren't moved. It's so simple, but so profound. Of course the rocks are old, but that proves nothing about whether someone came along much later and arranged them. And he even had evidence. His team had studied stones brought up from the site and found what looked for all the world like tool marks, things that you just don't get from natural erosion. He published his findings, but because it didn't fit neatly into either the purely legend or purely natural box, it was just ignored.
And that's what makes the AI's findings so powerful. This impartial machine with no agenda basically validated a decade of human work that had been dismissed, bringing it roaring back into the spotlight.
But here's the thing. This story isn't just about one bridge in one part of the world. It's about to get so much bigger. You see, the research team realized they had something powerful on their hands. And Ram Setu, well, that was just the warm-up.
So they took their AI and pointed it at 12 other deeply controversial underwater sites all over the planet. We're talking about places you might have heard of, like the famous Yanaguni Monument off Japan, other strange structures found near the Bahamas, and mysterious ruins in the Mediterranean. These are all places that have been locked in that same exact debate for decades. Natural fluke or man-made artifact.
And the results were absolutely staggering. Of those 12 other sites, the AI flagged 9 of them as anomalous. 9, all showing signs that just didn't jive with natural explanations. Only 3 came back as likely natural. All of a sudden, Ram Setu wasn't just a one-off. It looked like it could be part of a much wider global pattern.
So you have to ask yourself, what does this actually mean? It points to the mind-bending possibility that we're living on a planet with a massive, hidden chapter in its history. A history of ancient civilizations that built huge structures along coastlines. Coastlines that are now buried under hundreds of feet of water since the end of the last ice age. A history we've basically written off as myth because it just didn't fit with what we thought we knew.
And this is where it all comes together, and it's about so much more than old rocks. We're entering a time where AI, an objective non-human intelligence, can look at our world and challenge our most cherished beliefs. It's forcing us to re-examine things we were sure were settled, to question the dogma that's been passed down for generations.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if everything we've been taught, all our cultural biases, what if they've created giant blind spots in how we see the past? What if a machine, with none of that baggage, can actually see what we're blind to?
And if we even entertain the idea that this hidden history is real, that these ancient civilizations existed, then it leads to a much darker question. What happened to them? Where did they all go?
Which, of course, brings us to the final chilling question. If it's possible for an ancient, maybe even global civilization to be so completely wiped out that we've almost totally forgotten them, could it happen to us? Suddenly, the mystery of Ram Setu isn't just about the ancient past anymore. It's a very real question about our own future.